YouTube, welcome back. James MTG Biggie here, and today I just wanted to do a sort of update video. I know I keep calling these videos channel updates, where I just talk about a bunch of broad topics in Magic. I think I have to come up with a better word or a better name for that. But this is basically just new stuff going on in Magic, new stuff that I'm doing with Magic, things that I've done today, and specifically, and that I'm planning on in the future, stuff like that. So I'll get right into it. Today I went and played some Modern at my local store, and I've been kind of burnt out on the whole Aether Vial decks, playing decks that are subjectively less powerful and less the required synergy is accomplished. I mean, obviously, when people in Modern are playing combo decks like Storm, they're playing big mana decks like Tron that just drop huge permanents into play. They're playing these collected company combo decks that go infinite quickly, or these mid-range decks full of pretty powerful spells and creatures like Tarmogoyfs and stuff like that, and like Death Shadows that are really big and stuff like that. Like, Death and Taxes and Merfolk are great decks. They'll always be my favorite sort of decks to play, but every now and then you just want to kind of play a game of Magic where you don't have to assemble an entire engine to win the game, where you would just objectively play powerful cards and just win games for fun. Not to say that I don't win games for fun with Death and Taxes and Merfolk, because I absolutely do, and I have, but sometimes you just want to change it up. Sometimes instead of relying on synergistic 2 and 3 drops, you want to just do big dumb things. And I was looking for a new deck to do big dumb things with that I could put together pretty quickly and easily and play some Modern. And to the credit of MTG Goldfish and a Magic Online player, Deshidi, I'm probably butchering that, I saw a video on YouTube about this mono white Tron build. And I'm not going to deck tech it because they already did, and I will absolutely link the MTG Goldfish page link into it. And the deck is sweet. I was like, that looks like a sort of Tron deck I can get behind, because I don't like Tron decks. I play them periodically because I happen to have the stuff for it. Other than that, it's not my sort of style, but this one is a little bit closer to what I'd like to be doing. So, obviously, Tron package, some basics, and like your Ugins, your Karns, and then a bunch of white spells and lands. Thalia's Lancers with the new legend rule is bananas. You could just go tutor for an Elsbeth, an Ulamog, an Ugin, a Karn, or a freaking Elish Norn. So the deck was super sweet. I did only go 2 and 2. But I don't feel like that is representative of how good this deck is. It's super fun. And I got to play against my buddy Dave tonight. He played Eldrazi Tron, and I sort of just crushed him. Like, it felt like I could play the mid game with him, because that's Eldrazi Tron's advantage. This is the powerful mid game where their lower mana stuff is really powerful. And if they get to it before you can get to Tron and play your higher mana stuff in your average Tron deck, they disrupt you a lot and win the game that way. With this, like, you have a mid game as well. Your Lancers, getting your removal spells online, waiting, getting your Lancers, getting your legendary stuff, your Planeswalkers and stuff, because you get to abuse the new Planeswalker rule, is pretty powerful, and it felt like I was at a huge advantage against Eldrazi Tron, which is sweet. I played against my other friend RJ. He played Scapeshift, and he went off on me game 1 and won, and then game 2, I just started carning his lands down really quick on turn 3 Tron, and then by that time it was like Lancers into Ulamog, blow up his lands, and win the game. The sideboard plan or whatever was pretty decent. I didn't have the exact sideboard shown in the deck tech here. I was missing a Crucible. I had forgot to grab a Stoning Silence before I left the house, and I only had access to 3 Leyline of Sanctity, not 4. So I took out the Crucible and 1 Leyline, and I played 2 Timely Reinforcements. The other 2 matchups I played against Infect, and game 1, I got to just Path to Exile his dudes until I could set up and Lancers for an Elish Norn, and he scooped. And then games 2 and 3, I kind of had a little bit of a slower draw, and I was able to Path to Exile 2 dudes, and he just drew, like, he went wide and got me that way with Infect, which happens. I was unable to find a Wrath or an Oblivion Stone. So he got me there. And then I lost to Burn, and Burn is one of those matchups for all Tron decks that is a little rough. I had a lot of board against him with Worm Coil. I even boarded in 3 Leylines, and Big Linvala, and the 2 Timelies I put in my deck. And I kept a hand with Awkward Mana, but a Leyline in a 7-card hand. And I thought that would kind of help me set up and get me there. And he had a hand that was like 3 Monastery Swift Spears, and was able to eventually find a Destructive Revelry and attack me for like 14 or something ridiculous. Or do 14, I mean, not attack me for 14, but either way, the deck is sweet. I'm going to continue playing around with it, and I like the idea of this version of Tron. If I'm going to play a Tron deck from here on out, it's probably going to be something close to this list. So that was Modern tonight, 2-2. Not a great record, not a terrible record. It just was kind of middle of the road, but I think I ended up with 2 pretty bad matchups for Tron classically, where I had more gameplay against Infect and a little bit more against Burn with the white sideboard cards and with the main deck Elish Norn against Infect. I just couldn't line things up and assemble Tron the proper way or draw into my powerful mid-game spells and go off with, you know, the big hitters before I just got aggroed out of the game really quickly. So that's that. I will link down below for a full deck tech. I'm not going to go on the ins and outs of it. Like I said, I don't want to take credit for it, but it was a fun deck to play, and I really enjoyed it. So then, beyond that, other things new in Magic. They announced a bunch of updates to the Grand Prix schedule, as well as some different changes and adjustments, as well as some new promos. So, looking at that, the Swiss rounds and Day 2 cut have changed. Now it is 6 and 2 on Day 1, gets you into Day 2. In most cases, except for in Limited, they'll play a full 9 rounds, and it's still 6 and 2 after the 7th, or after the 8th round, and then they play that last 9th round, and everybody who doesn't make that 6 and 2 going into round 9 is eliminated. The promo here I got pulled up big for Grand Prix is Mutavault by John Avon on the artwork, and holy crap, it's beautiful. I'm going to need to get me 4 of these, and I'm going to play these forever until the end of time in Merfolk. So that's pretty sweet. Yeah, the artwork's great. The color palette and all that is very cool. I like the light sources from the ceiling here, and the tentacle-y structure and stuff. Little faces and stuff in the art. Pretty sweet promo. I'm glad it's finally not Progenitus. I went to GP Orlando last year and got a Progenitus and have done nothing with it since. These I will seek out 4 of and keep them forever. Then the RPTQ promo is Noble Hierarch with new art by Matt Stewart. I'm not sure I like this art better than the original, but it's cool artwork in addition to the original, and it's a cool sort of very premium version of this card. If you're a big Noble Hierarch guy or girl, you probably are going to want this card. So that is cool. Outside of that, they updated the schedule, and we get to have a Grand Prix in Orlando again next year, which is exciting because the last one that we had it was limited, and not being the huge limited fan that I am not, I didn't play the main event. I went all weekend, and I played side events all weekend. I got the Infinite Challenge badge, and I just grinded out as many Legacy and Modern side event tournaments as I can. And it was fun. I had a blast, but I would have liked to play in a main event of a Grand Prix, and now I get to locally. Orlando's about an hour and a half away, so that is cool, and it's right around a couple friends of mine's birthdays. My buddy RJ and my buddy Nick will both have their birthdays near then, so it's probably going to be a pretty big celebration and a pretty fun time to go jam some Standard, which I feel has been in a pretty healthy spot right now. Standard seems sweet. I haven't played a ton of it yet, but I am going to, and I'll get to that later on. But yeah, so get to jam some Standard. I know Standard is going to look totally different next August, but if the format continues in a healthy manner going forward, I'll be happy to play Standard again and play in a large event. Aside from that, the other events going on that I would maybe consider going to, I'm still not into the idea of spending a ton of money on travel, but there are a couple like incentive reasons to play and to travel to Grand Prix. The most of which is Seattle in April, Legacy Grand Prix. The upside of Seattle is I have a cousin that lives in Seattle, and I damn sure could be like, yo dog, let me crash on your couch and Uber my way back and forth to the convention center and save a lot of money on a hotel and all that stuff. The other upside is I've never been to the West Coast, and I understand that going to a Grand Prix is not really like sightseeing and utilizing the time and effort you're putting into traveling on seeing the place you're going. You're pretty much seeing the four walls of the convention center you're in. But it would be nice to go and at least a little bit experience on the nighttime after the tournament closes up for the evening, going to see Seattle and spending time with my cousin who's a good dude, so I may consider that. Otherwise, the only other events that I would consider traveling for are the team constructed, which Santa Clara, probably not happening because it's too early in the new year for me, for job reasons and stuff. The other team constructed events are Toronto, Canada. So, like, if I really wanted to get a passport and a couple friends together, maybe. And then just the normal schedule. So, that's that as far as that goes. The other thing I wanted to briefly talk about and mention on, which I hinted at earlier, is I'm actually going to go play some Standard this weekend. I am taking off of work to go play in a PPTQ here locally, and it'll be the first Standard tournament I've played in this format. It'll be the first Standard tournament I've played since the time when Dragons of Tarkir and Magic Origins were in the format. Well, I take that back. Outside of, I played one local tournament when Aetherworks Marvel was still in the format like a week or two before it got banned. Other than that, I haven't played Standard in a long time. I kind of fell out of love with Standard, or not out of love with it, but just fell out of interest with Standard when obviously most other people did. But I never had the desire to really get back into it yet, and I'm going to try to slowly. I am borrowing a deck from a friend, and I'm going to play a PPTQ because it was an easy opportunity to. It was a good day to take off of work and to give it a shot and go and see how I do. For the sake of maintaining some form of, not secrecy, but like some form of anonymity as far as what I am playing, just because I know that a handful of people that I know locally who may show up to this PPTQ will watch this. The friends of mine that know me or whatever know what I'll be playing, but I'm not going to announce what I'm playing here. It's a deck that exists in Standard, so it's one of like 5 or 6 different decks, and I'm going to give it a shot. I don't think that I'm going to be at a terrible advantage with my gameplay. I mean, I could play tight enough, I'm sure, but I haven't played enough Standard to know all the weird interactions and the sequencing things. To be fair to this format and this Standard, from what I have seen, from the bit I have played, from watching my friends play, it's more of a complicated format than Standards of recent past. Energy is a mechanic that requires a lot of well-timed triggering and resource management and complicated interaction, more so than back when, like, the era that I started back into Magic during Khans of Tarkir block, when it was pretty straightforward. You just play your dudes and you attack, or you play your answers and play more mid-rangey, and then you get your Siege Rhinos and win the game, or whatever. The interaction in this Standard compared to that Standard when I was really, really hardcore into Standard is a lot different. And a little bit more complicated and more complex. That said, it's not a great time to be out of practice in Standard. And it's mostly, I think, Kaladesh block and like a little bit of the interaction in Amonkhet. It pays dividends to those who play the format often and know what to expect and know what they're playing against and know their matchups. This is the first tournament I'm playing in this format, and so I'm going to be a little bit lacking in my knowledge of what to expect from each of these decks. I mean, I've seen all the decks, but I haven't played and got the reps in against all of them that I feel necessary. So I get to do a lot of this on the fly, and sometimes that pays off. Not like statistically so, but sometimes learning it as you go for me helps me play better Magic. Sometimes going into something a little bit blind, I may not fall into that sort of pattern of steps A, B, and C equal results in this matchup, in this situation, at this board state or whatever. Being able to read a board state as I'm going will keep me more alert, if that makes sense. But we'll see. It's not entirely likely that I come out qualified for an RPTQ, just statistically speaking. But if I go and play some good Magic and do even semi-well and have some fun, it'll be worth the experience. And it'll be at least a good introduction to a format properly where I can start the path down the road of playing Standard regularly again. Outside of that, let's see, what have I covered? We've covered Modern, we've covered the Tron deck, we've covered the Grand Prix and the promos, of course. I believe, just before recording this, I watched a video that on Channel Fireball that LSV put up about Vintage, which I find very interesting as a person that doesn't play a ton of Vintage at all. Even like on this website here, untap.in, bootleg style. I find it interesting that the results from Eternal Weekend came back, and the top 8 was like 5 Workshops decks and 2 or 3 Oath of Druids decks, rather. That's interesting. LSV's video, he's calling for not calling for it, but suggesting that maybe it's time to restrict Mishra's Workshop. And in a way, I can see that, because the card's insane. That deck is super powerful. And if it's 5 out of your top 8 results in the biggest vintage tournament that exists, like the only large vintage tournament that exists every year, that's a little problematic. That's a little bit iffy of a format. But where I kind of stand against the restriction is the handful of people that play that format, A, know what they're getting into, and B, accept that sort of stuff. You have to invest thousands and thousands of dollars. Like a Workshops deck to buy into the format and get a complete deck is probably worth like 5 or 6 of my Legacy deck. So I get that, you know, it's a small format as far as player base goes. There's a large monetary investment and a huge, huge hurdle that stops people from getting into it. So you don't have to cater to new players when you ban and restrict things for the sake of the playing, of being friendly to newer players, or being, you know, the barrier of entry isn't there for that reason. People don't avoid getting into Vintage because of powerful things like Mishra's Workshop. It's not going to stop people from playing Vintage. The reason is because it costs so damn much and it's so expensive. That, and like, if you restrict a card that costs $1,000 each, that's real money in real time that people have invested. And I understand that they get into this cycle of banning single cards out of that deck that aren't Workshop to slightly weaken it. But LSV does have a point. As new sets come out, they're just going to be good artifacts. And when you have Black Lotus every turn, multiple Black Lotuses, it's hard to not play, you know, not have just good artifacts that are a little higher costed than normal for formats like Standard and Modern to just fall right into place in that deck. So that's interesting. If I were to play Vintage, I don't know that a Shops deck is what I would pick up. I'd probably gravitate toward the Oath of Druids deck, because I used to play Oath back in the day. And so that would sort of speak to me on a nostalgic level, and it's a great deck. But those who play Vintage, I feel like, are fine with the format the way it is. You also have decks like Storm and stuff like that that are pretty degenerate. And I think Shops keeps those decks in check too. I think if you nerf Shops too hard, you're going to just create the rise of Storm. And that's difficult. Because nobody really likes Storm. Storm players don't even really like Storm, to be honest. For the most part. Anyway, that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate it. This was just a little update, a little sort of things happening in Magic with me going forward, and things I'm doing and things I plan on doing. So, that being said, I'll talk to you guys again soon. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll link a couple videos down below me here and here, and you could feel free to check those out. And definitely drop me a comment down below and let me know what you think of all these things, the Grand Prix schedule. If I'll see any of you next year at Grand Prix Orlando, feel free to let me know and maybe come by and say hi or something like that, or set something up. I know it's a long way out, but why not plan ahead? And I look forward to hearing from all of you guys. I'll talk to you again soon.